What is your, oh shit, I've got to get the hell outta here right now story? Bad diesel fire at work. I saw the fireball billowing toward me, so I jumped in a pit. The fireball blew over me. And when it retreated, I got the hell out of Dodge. I got some gnarly third-degree burns. But I survived. My husband and I were heading out of town. We saw a guy on the side of the highway pacing under the overpass. I asked my husband to take the exit and go over the overpass and take the next exit to continue on the highway. The second we took the exit, the guy jumped in front of a semi and killed himself. He was a freshman in college. The semi driver was 72 years old and 3 weeks away from retiring. I cannot imagine what the drive is going through. I was driving in the dead of winter in Iowa. I saw this dude fishtailing all over behind me and going faster. Eventually he comes up on my rear. And I try to move over to let him speed through. My gut feeling was right. I just acted too late. He lost traction as he was passing me. And hit me. Made me spin out. And I flew into a snowplow. I was in Thailand back in 2010. On the southern islands after a full moon party. My friend and I were talking to two girls who invited us to play poker. We went and sat down with two German guys and two burly Thai guys full of tattoos and began to play. They were joking. Friendly. And the buy-in was $10. We lost some pots. Won some pots. And overall it was a happy experience. The Thai guys beat us, and on the last hand I managed to claw my chips back to about $8. My friend was looking tired, so I gave him the nod. I thanked for the game and I said we would cash out and we would be on our way. The Thai guys put a machete on the table and told us to fuck off. My friend, myself and the two German guys noped out of that situation as fast as we could. On the way back the girls caught up with us and apologized. But it meant fuck all because they were clearly in on the take. Lesson learned. If pretty girls ask you to play a game, it's for nefarious reasons. As a young teenager, maybe 13 I was camping in the backcountry during a summer camp in the Midwest U.S. Second to last night of the trip we started seeing mammatus clouds and the sky turned green. But no immediate rain or hail. Being the good Midwestern kids we were, we knew the signs and found a semi-solid shelter before the storm hit. When we got out of the backcountry we found out that 3 major tornadoes had touched down and gotten as close as half a kilometer to our original campsite. Edit. I'm not American, but I lived in the Midwest for 10 years when I was a kid. I moved away about 7 years ago. Hence the un-American terminology. My friend and I met at Waffle House for lunch. A guy came into the restaurant looking for a piece of paper that he had accidentally left on a table. The waitress didn't know where the paper was located and might have thrown it away. The guy got upset saying the paper was important and he was going home to get his gun stored under his mattress. My friend and I quickly paid our check and got the heck out of the restaurant. When I was in high school, early 80s, I saw a lot of heavy metal bands. I had a friend who could always get us backstage after the show. So Anvil played and we went backstage. All of a sudden the lead singer said, "Okay, all the girls take off your clothes or get out." I got out. The rest of the girls stayed. I was on a restaurant and they were using a propane tank to power an outdoors heater. Suddenly the tank started to catch fire and I got out quickly because I thought it was going to explode. The staff turned the tank off and everyone laughed at me for overreacting, but damn, I got scared lol. I was leaving for work at 5:30 a.m. While it was still dark, I locked the inside door handle and walked out the door, pulling the door closed behind me. As I turned around to walk off the porch toward my car, I saw 4 men jump out of a van and start coming toward me. The street was otherwise empty. My heart was pounding and I felt panic start as I was digging in my big, messy purse for my keys to unlock the door and get back in my house. The whole time, I'm just thinking they are going to grab me, shove me in the van, and kill me. I was able to get back in my house before they made it to me. But it scared the shit out of me. Turns out they were immigrations officers looking for someone who used to live in our house. And that is standard practice for them if they think the suspect will run. My ex-husband came into our bedroom where I was sleeping and screamed into my ear, "You and your mom need to stop playing mind games with me." Quote, understand I didn't speak to him much to not set him off. He hadn't spoke to my mom in 3 months. Without looking at him, I walked downstairs in the dark to sleep on the couch. As I was laying down, a big ceramic lamp flew by my head and smashed against the wall. He followed me downstairs and I didn't hear him because the dogs came with me and their collars jingled loud enough I couldn't hear him. He'd been abusive, but after throwing a heavy lamp at my head in the dark, I knew he'd kill me. I couldn't leave that night because he took my keys, but I ran away to a safe house as soon as he left the house. Some dude in my uni class, trying not to sound non-inclusive here, but he was a special case, kept talking about his fucked up life. Some things he done that made people fear him. Because he was unpredictable. Brought a knife into class. Placed it casually on the desk. One of those big fuck off Rambo ones. A girl in class was one of those mouthy types. Talked about him and he responded by getting her in a chokehold and threatened her. Smashed a pint glass over his head for no apparent reason, other than to show that he could. Ended up in hospital. Everyone stayed the fuck away from him. But only added to his paranoia. Everyone graduated and I stayed in that city for a bit. Bumped into him by accident in my gym. He told me I was one of the few who he didn't want to stab. Kept myself out of others' business. But he took it as a sign of friendship and wanted to follow me back to my apartment to hang out. Told him I was going to work after gym. Never went back to that gym ever again. I was in Paris with my family. On holiday. We were walking down the Champs-Élysées when we noticed that the road was suddenly lined either side with riot police. We quickly got off the road, behind the line of police, and ducked into some showroom whilst some protesters of some kind then had a mini riot with the police. I don't remember much as my parents probably tried to keep me away from the windows so that I wouldn't be able to see or even end up in any sort of danger. I have worked in various national parks and forests in my career and I've had a few close calls. When at Zion, I was assisting with a SAR op in the Narrows. We were already on borrowed time because we got word that a rancher had noted a downpour up canyon. The radio call was enough to pucker it up. But about 5 minutes later, I started seeing the water rise and could feel vibration under my feet. We got everyone on our team out to a high spot and a 7-foot wall of water caught up with us. Luckily, it passed quickly and fanned out nicely just downstream, but Jesus also got surrounded by a fire. Once, my lookout was clear of brush and pretty safe on its granite ridge. But when the wildlife starts making camp downstairs and they ask if you wanna hitch a ride with heli, you say, yes, please. My parents liked going to the backyard gatherings of their friends, which were thinly veiled excuses to get drunk. They dragged us kids all along for some reason. But I never much cared for sitting around watching a bunch of adults get hammered. There was always something stupid that happened, and more often than not it was violent. Now, you all have to understand that these friends that they associated with were scum. Wannabe gangsters, drunks and addicts, petty thieves, domestic abusers, and one ex-convict who claimed that he had helped kill pedophiles in prison. Just all around the very picture of the dregs of our modern society. The night in question had the full cast of lowlives freshly scraped from the bottom of the barrel and put into one backyard, and, in hindsight, there's no way something wouldn't happen. It all started when one guy put his hands on his wife. The ex-con guy didn't take kindly to that and punched him out. This guy's buddies got up to square off, and so did the ex-con's buddies. It quickly devolved into yelling and exchanged blows until one of the guys, who lived next door, came out with a fucking chainsaw. So, I'm inside the house on the property and hear people yelling, screaming, and a pregnant woman who was crying ran in with some kids. I sat there bewildered until my parents ran in, both seeming almost sober from the adrenaline, and essentially told my brothers and I, "We need to go now." So we stayed at a cousin's house close by because they were still in really no condition to drive. And to this day I refuse to go to any of those shitty little gatherings. In high school I went to a party in a recently abandoned house on the outskirts of town. There were a lot of people I knew there, but also a lot of shady folks I was unfamiliar with. Things started out okay, or at least as okay as they can for a party with a bunch of liquored up teenagers. As the night wore on, people started destroying things. I guess just because the place was abandoned. I left when someone threw a toilet out of an upstairs window. I found out later that the cops showed up. Several people ran from them through a nearby cornfield but were caught. A friend of mine ran right into a barbed wire fence, however, and ended up in the hospital. I'd recently moved to another country and met an American guy with whom I'd decided to go drinking. In a small village about a half hour away from the city where we both lived. We had a few beers, some laughs, a little karaoke, and decided to call it a night. My seal had broken much earlier in the night, and, in the taxi on the way home, nature called once more. I tried to hold it as long as I could. But it was a beer piss after all. At this point, I only knew a few words in the local language. So I asked my pal, who was fluent, to translate to the driver that I'd appreciate it if he'd pull over so I could relieve myself. I've learned since then that the locals have a habit of A. Pretending they don't understand foreigners if it inconveniences them. B. Make no effort to listen when a foreigner speaks because they assume they won't understand. Or C. Genuinely don't understand due to pronunciation and/or quirks related to different local dialects. I've no idea which of the aforementioned language barriers occurred on this particular night. But the driver continued to ignore the American even after he had repeated himself numerous times. I had finally resigned myself to the fact that I was either going to have to hold it in or piss myself on the back seat of this dude's cab. When, suddenly, the American, fed up with what he, wrongly or rightly, perceived as being ignored, grabs the wheel of the car and spins us off of the road. We go hurtling into a field. The driver slams on the brakes, and we narrowly avoid smashing head first into a tree. For the next 30 seconds or so, I have no idea what happened because I immediately jumped out of the car to ease my bladder. After the jubilation over my release had worn off, it finally occurred to me what the fuck had just happened. I looked up and saw the American guy scuffling with the taxi driver that he had just scared half to death. He broke free and we started across the field. About 500 meters away from the car, he realized that he'd left his bag, including his passport, in the car. He went back and I left. I hitchhiked for around 10 minutes along the road until somebody picked me up. I later discovered that the guy was an ex-Marine with the words, "I will kill you," tattooed across his chest. The armed forces had seriously screwed him up and he had huge anger issues. I always found him pleasant enough. But after that experience, I kept a little distance. As to what happened after he returned to the car, I never got the full story. I expect he had to pay reparations to the driver and a bribe to the police. This isn't going to be as dramatic as most other stories, but I was no older than 10 at this time, so cut me some slack. It was Halloween and I was either Miley Cyrus, not too proud of this, or a pink Power Ranger, but there's a house in our neighborhood that always had a guy sitting on his driveway with a chainsaw. It doesn't have a chain so it can't actually cut things, but it still revs like a chainsaw does. We're walking up to his house and being the forgetful child I was, I completely forgot that the person sitting there was alive. I walked up to the bowl and told the normal-looking person trick or treat and she put my candy in my bag. I went to back up and Chainsaw Man stood up and turned it on and within 30 seconds I was at the other end of the street. I have never ran faster than I ran that day, and for that one moment in time every bit of clumsiness in my body disappeared. This was 8 to 10 years ago and Chainsaw Guy still does this. Last fall me and my dive buddies went on a spearfishing trip to one of our favorite wrecks. About 5 minutes in a 10+ foot long great white swims up us. It gets a little too close for comfort a couple times. Circled behind us and whatnot, so we get out and head to a different wreck a few miles away. I jump out the boat and as soon as the bubbles clear and I can see, I'm met by another, even bigger white shark not 10 feet away. I mean, he's right fucking there next to me. I nearly shit my wetsuit and we all scramble back in the boat as fast as possible. Once we all got back in the boat, we dangled my one buddy over the side of the boat and he shoots a decent amberjack. We were hoping to get the shark's attention and film it eating the fish, but he never went for it. We figured it wasn't hungry, so we decide to hop in and film him a bit. The second shark wasn't as pushy as the first. After checking us out initially, he never came much closer than 60 to 70 feet or so. We fished around him for about an hour and almost everyone got a nice African pompano for dinner. Here's a picture of the first shark. The sand tiger shark underneath it is every bit of 8 to 10 feet long. My buddy warned me about the first shark, so I was expecting it when I saw it, but the second shark came as a total surprise. I saw it, all I could think was, I gotta get the fuck out of here right now. Ripped my pants while bowling. Incidentally, I was also going commando, and the meats and cheeses were fully exposed. I bowled a frame or two before noticing too. It was a second date man facepalming. I was on a placement in a very conservative part of Egypt. As foreigners, we had to have armed guards to escort us around. Men and women were not allowed to touch each other and women were to be covered up. I met a guy out there and we were both desperate to be close. We couldn't help but hold hands briefly walking down the street. The guards suddenly called us over and motioned for us to get in their truck. There were about 4 of them with big loaded guns. They didn't speak great English, so we had no idea what was going on. It was pitch black, and as they drove us out of the main town I started to get scared. This was 2 weeks after the Sharm el-Sheikh bombings. We came to what looked like a big abandoned military compound and they drove inside. They told us to get out and ushered us towards a pier. As we walked down the pier, they got a couple of chairs out and sat down staring at us. At this moment I literally pictured us on Al Jazeera thinking we were about to be executed and dumped in the Nile. Slowly we realized that wasn't the plan and relaxed a little. We walked to the end of the pier and enjoyed a kiss. We decided they probably just took us here because they could see we wanted to get closer, and for them it was probably novel and interesting. The relief was overwhelming.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Aircast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.